Thank you guys for joining us. We are here today to talk about monetization. We've got some experts in the field here who've been doing this for years, been running all sorts of ads and different stuff to bring more pennies out of each user. So I will, we've only got 30 seconds, we have 30 seconds, go. 30 minutes here, a bunch of questions, and we want to leave a little time for Q&A. So new approach, we're going to put their answers on the screen so you don't have to spend time like going to each person, and then we'll just dive into like the most interesting stuff from each question and the color commentary. So we have a bunch of different types of studios represented here. I'll go through each person here. We got CK over here on the side. So CK is the CEO of Kooapps, and they make some really cool casual games. Really great little company that's mostly in the Philippines. CK is out of Seattle, which is where I'm from too. And so they run a bunch of different video and interstitial, run like every ad network ever, so that they can tell you anything. Tayber, Thinking Ape, local celebrity in the game development world, I'd say. I've been coming to his meetups for years, and yes, everyone knows Tayber. So social kind of messaging type games. They've run a bunch of different types of ads as well. We got CJ from iWin, a veteran of the space. All sorts of kind of casual games. One of their bigger games is Deal or No Deal from the game show. And then we've got Kenneth here from Hothead, a big local studio, also a local celebrity, at least in my mind. I've been working with Kenneth off and on for years, it seems like. And they run every type of ad under the sun as well. So that's it for the intros. So kind of diverse set of types of games represented here, but lots of experience on monetization. And as this business of advertising has matured, these guys have kind of been along for the ride to learn all the things to do right and wrong. So we'll dive into that. So my first question I posed to the crew here was, okay, so what percentage of your engineering resources go to ads in any way, shape, or form, whether it's putting in SDKs or building UI related to ads? And then what percentage of your revenue comes from ads? I'm missing one answer here, but surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, depending on your perspective, you'll see revenue here is really quite a great investment, you could say, ad revenue versus engineering. Any comments here from the crew on, when you thought about this question, did it spark any insights or thoughts?
I think for us, like, none of the engineers wanted to work on the ads too much, and so it's always like, hey, if we get this in, we can get a bunch more features. And so so for us, that explains why a large percent of our revenue come from ads. But in terms of time spent, like it's much easier to get the team excited for working on game features and stuff. But like we need to monetize, and especially for casual games, I think ads are really important. And so that's for us, yeah.
Since I have the mic in my hand, I guess I'm obligated.
Yep.
But one thing that, in Deal or No Deal, sort of the game is the game. It's a very simple game. So for literally 2 years, we did no updates to the game other than updating ad SDKs. So it became very hard to sort of, talk about and promote, hey, when you're going to do an update, the value add there. And so we sort of just started making stuff up. But so very little effort, I think, went to actually the production of the game, and significant amount actually went to working with the likes of HyperMX or a new ad supplier. But what we did see, what was pretty unique, is that every single time that we added more ads into the game, it had no impact on retention, but it always had a greater impact on monetization. So the net was more ads, the better.
There you go. You don't have to answer if you don't want. Anything?
I think you're on there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think the industry evolving, so is the ad space. So I think previously, maybe like 3-4 years ago, you just ask an engineer essentially just to put an SDK in. But nowadays, you're asking the engineer and the designer and the producer. You're involving a lot more people, but the effort is well worth it. I would say that, because you have to definitely incorporate, not just putting SDK in, but incorporate into your game as well. I think that's the biggest difference, and we definitely see an impact on revenue. And I concur that ads definitely, if you put it in the right way, it doesn't hurt retention. In fact, it will help retention and engagement, and it will help conversion as well.
Cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, our games are a little bit more mid-core, so we have probably less ads. But we spent we spend probably less time on engineering as well, but we did build an entire system for Party in My Dorm, which allowed us to spend very little time integrating new ad networks. And so we spent a lot of initial resources, but now it's actually quite minimal.
So this is the most self-serving slide for me. I work at an ad network, just full disclosure, it's called HyperMX. We run brand video ads in games. So we work with these guys to help monetize. A lot of the ads you see in games are for other games. We try to bring in ads from Toyota, McDonald's, that kind of thing. And one of the things we always hear from developers is, it just takes too much effort, too much. My engineers don't want to do it, or I've got other priorities. And when I hear about the percentage of revenue that's coming from ads growing and growing from almost every studio I talk to since I've been doing this, it seems like that payoff, is often worth it. All right, next question. So avoidable mistakes that you've made along this path. I put the kind of the highlights up here, not being aggressive enough, et cetera, et cetera. Anyone want to comment on their comment here? And I actually don't know who said what here. I kept it totally anonymous, so it's true. It's true. You can look at my SurveyMonkey account.
I guess I'll start again. So mine's the last one, not being able to turn off ad networks remotely. So Dan was really good. He definitely delivered on his promises. But there's some ad networks that when they initially talk to you, they promise blah, blah, eCPMs, blah, blah, fill rates. And so, so when you add it in and then you go, oh shoot, like it's not what you expected, and then you want to turn it off, and then you go and you ask your engineers like, oh, can we turn it off? And they say no, it was hard coded, this, that. Then so I'd say that's one of the you learn that pretty quickly. So.
So mine is all ad networks and SDK are created. I think that's a common mistake. That saying, okay, so network A, network B, they're all the same, not much different. In reality, it's not. The engineering requirement is definitely different. You have to look at the memory consumption, the size. There's a lot to think about, and one tip is talk to your friends. Talk to your friends in the industry. Basically, ask the network, ask them for a reference, and basically saying, hey, who do you work with? Who would you recommend that I can talk to? Because there's a lot of on the publisher side, we love sharing information with other pub so that they avoid a pitfall. Because in return, essentially, if I think anyway, is pay it forward. So at some point, you're gonna have a network that you're gonna share back with me. Same kind of thing to avoid, and then that's how we learn, essentially.
Mine is the rewards in the core loop cannibalized revenue. So when we first integrated ads, we had it so that the ads rewarded progress into the core loop, and that was kind of dangerous. It cannibalized some of our revenue. It still performed really well, but we didn't want to cannibalize our in-app purchases, so we changed it to reward goods outside of the core loop, and that was a much better.
Yeah, this is a really interesting answer, because I like to believe in my perfect world that it would never cannibalize revenue. Ads are perfect. But it was actually kind of interesting to see someone put that, because it's actually the opposite of what some other comments later here are. Because games like Crossy Road put it right into the core loop, and it's been a big bonanza, if you will. But you guys are actually smart enough to analyze it in a way that you could tell for sure.
Yeah, and Crossy Roads is kind of a game designed to deliver ads.
Right.
But our games are designed to have these long-term social interactions, and so it's important for us to not cannibalize that in-app purchase. But also, we designed our games with no video ads to start, so trying to shoehorn it in was really, it took some massaging, and we found a pretty good, basically a variable reward system where they have a spinner to get some rewards, and that allowed us to really tweak and control how much currency we're giving out and how many goods, and putting custom quality items for the players that they can only get from video ads. And so they want the video ads because they can only get certain things from video ads, but it doesn't cannibalize the rest of the game.
I think that variable reward thing works well too. That's something we work with Glue on their Racing Rivals game, and they do a great job of sometimes I get diamonds or sometimes I get cash, and it's different every time, and get that kind of slot mechanic in people's head. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I'm not sure which mine was, but I'd have to say probably be E, because actually all of these I think are very relevant to all the games. But I would certainly concur with that all not ad networks are the same, and they also change over time. So you could be working with one ad network in 6 months that might be losing some momentum in the space. And so I think it's critical to continue to either A, mediate or continue to test various other ones. And really relevant to that, we started out with interstitials, and then we went to video, and none of them were rewarded. And then we said, hey, if we're going to sort of jam ads down, quote unquote, people's throats, might as well give them some value out of that. And so we really then moved all ads to be rewarded ads. And it's not as if they had to go to a certain area to get rewarded stuff, that it just happened for watching a video, which became much more well-receptive.
I think you guys might have invented the rewarded interstitial. I don't think I've ever seen that before. It was like, it's a forced ad, but you get rewarded. It's kind of,
might as well.
It's genius, really. It's like, if you're going to make someone watch an ad. All right, let's go to the next one. So mediation, all these guys use a third party, in some case also some combination of in-house software to manage multiple networks in one game so that you can optimize revenue from a bunch of different networks. So the number one reason for doing that, simplicity. I like that one a lot because that's something we talk about at my company a lot is making this kind of thing simple. But all these are good reasons. Any of you that have gone the route of in-house versus third party and gone through that transition? I know CK, I think you guys might have.
Real quick. So we did, and we worked with one group, not to sort of mention names, and then we did switch to HyperMX, but sometimes mediation works and it doesn't because a lot of times the ad networks don't like it, and so you have to still carry their SDK. Anyway, we have been happy with sort of the HyperMX model, but I think when you look at all of these here, it certainly yields a higher CPM, but I think it gives you a good visibility into all the networks and which networks are trending higher, and so you don't have to do this manual process of turning one off and turning the other one on. Ultimately, it produces a higher yield.
It saves you that engineering time too every time you want to shut off a network.
Yeah, I always say let a company like ours do the dirty work. That's like our core mission is to help companies do this. There's no reason to kind of reinvent the wheel. Though that said, CK, you guys do a little bit of your own and you seem to do well with it. You kind of do a hybrid model.
Yeah, so we do our own mediation. We started off like really early, like 2013, when ad calling was only choice. And then very quickly, I think Wang contacted us and we wanted to try it out. And I think that was before any of the mediations were out. So we had built our own. And then what ended up happening was like the eCPMs don't fluctuate too much on like a daily basis. It's actually over weeks. And so we just look at it once a week and then sort of change the waterfall, and that's been good enough. But for Android, for example, because there's more sort of fragmentation, and Android for us is a hobby, and so for that one we use mediation. But in general, like if we build it ourselves, it allows us to have more control in testing out networks that may or may not be supported by some of the mediations and stuff. So
Cool. All right, let's move to the next one here. So average eCPM in the US for rewarded video on iOS. So I think we see a nice range here. I guess my first thought is, eCPMs are often a reflection of the type of game that you run. So I'm just going to guess that the highest one here is the most hardcore game and the lowest one is the most casual game. Is that a fair guess? Yeah. Yeah. Any major fluctuations or?
So I would sort of disagree with that because our game's Deal or No Deal is extremely casual. Yet it probably actually does have the highest CPM here, and the reason being is that I would actually say is because the game is actually not that much fun, and so there's a high click-through rate.
People are like, oh, that looks better than this game.
This game is kind of boring. I'm going to exit out. This other ad looks more appealing. But the reality is that when you're playing the game Deal or No Deal, it's a super fun TV game to watch. Got Howie, and you have a bunch of characters on there and winning real money. But when you aren't winning real money and you're older than the age of 5, it becomes pretty boring. And so you then get presented this casino ad. Casino ads, have a cost per install that that the advertisers are paying $6-7 per install, thus yields a higher CPM.
Yeah, if you have an audience that likes casino games like yours is pretty well, it's pretty similar, then you can do well. I think the casino guys drive really high eCPMs. So.
Yeah, my casino, I also have a casino title that I run, and the eCPM is high like yours as well, because the demographic skews that way.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would add is it's the eCPM sometimes, from personal opinion, is not the best way to measure success, because it also depends on how your game is feeding ads. If you're feeding a reward video and you don't cap them and people just go nuts and just farming, you will serve a lot of impression, but then you don't get a lot of conversion. So essentially your eCPM would just driven down to the bottom, right? But then if you do some a small capping that prevent people to farm in your economy, then that won't cannibalize the economy, but at the same time, your eCPM will be higher.
It's kind of tangent, but we also capped it based on time, so we have an appointment mechanic in the game to do video ads, and that actually increased the number of sessions per day in our game, so it actually had a positive influence on the product metrics.
I also think there's some nuances to how placements work with people's mindset, right? Like if you're an endless runner and you've died and you're presented this opportunity to watch a video, to download a game in order to keep going, you're not really in the mindset of wanting to explore that other game. You're just like, I just need that ad so I can like finish my guy. Whereas if you're kind of in the store, which isn't always the greatest place, but at least maybe you're in the mindset of like, oh, I'm kind of casually bouncing around the edges of the game. I'm not like super into the game. Maybe I will look at Clash of Clans or whatever. I just saw this game that's like shooting up the charts right now, Rodeo Stampede. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's published by Yoda One. And it looks kind of like a Crossy Road kind of game, and they're really smart. I don't know who actually developed it. But they did this thing where when it's a runner essentially, and so when your guy dies, it's like, would you like to watch a video? And if you say yes, it says cool. The video will run after you die again. Like so, basically, you get to keep going, and then when you're done with that, then you'd see the video, so you're more likely to actually download.
Do they stack?
What's that?
Do they stack? And you just keep stacking them and watch like 10 minutes of video?
I don't think so. I think you can only do one. Good question.
I'm going to put that in my game. That's awesome.
Yeah, so anyway, that's an interesting idea. I mean, the types of ads we run, which are brand ads, we don't care if no one's trying to install an app. So Toyota's going to pay out the same amount no matter what, whereas Supercell is going to only pay if your users are downloading. So in some placements like that, a CPV, a cost per view ad, might perform better than a CPI ad. In other places where a user actually can sit there and download, that might do better.
Yeah, until the brands figure that out, branded ads are the shit.
That's not an appropriate word.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting with brands because we'll talk to a brand who, they've got an agency that's spending millions of dollars for them. Like, we're going to do billboards and print and radio and apps. And these are not the people who understand all the nuances of the app world. And then you've got a different department in the company. It's like, oh, we're building an app and we want users for it. Or, so like the Jack in the Box app team is totally different from the brand awareness team that might spend $1 million running inside of apps. So it's still a new world for them. Okay, do you allow competitive ads? So ads that might take your players to a game that's very similar to yours. And we have a mix of answers here, but no one shuts them out completely here. Kenneth, you got a very hardcore game. You willing to do that?
Yeah, so definitely sometimes for us, and it all depends on how comfortable you are with your own game. So if we identify some of the top competitors who are also doing well, we probably block them, and vice versa. We know that we've been blocked as well, but we believe in our titles have a very high quality, and if a similar genre, which tends to have a high conversion, because if someone playing a shooting game, they're most likely try another shooting game. And what we did see before is that when someone downloads other games, they will actually come back and actually spend more. And we find that very interesting, and then we try to diagnose that, and then we basically, the only reason we come up with is, well, that's a, I want to say shittier, but inferior product, inferior product, and then so they will come back and say, hey, I enjoy your game, I'll spend more.
Yeah, it's almost like you've helped prove that your game is better than the market. That's interesting.
Well, it's kind of the elephant in the room, right? Is we don't get paid unless somebody installs the other game. And so to say in your product, like, you don't want to show competitive games, but you want people to install the game so you get paid for the video ad, it means that you might as well just show the game that they're going to go find in the store anyway. For example, in casino, we know that casino people will spin all their chips away and go play another casino game. So we're fine showing other casino games.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's the same. For us, it's a yes, and there's definitely other word games out there, and I think people like at least for us, like we've seen if they're stuck, then they maybe go play another game, or they think about it and then come back later. And so yeah,
Everyone's playing a lot of games.
So in addition to apps, we also run some game review sites like GameZebo and Download Free Games. And actually, just this morning, we were about to push live some new ads from Criteo and Taboola. And the first ad I saw was from one of our competitors, and I immediately said, hey, we're not going to go live unless we turn off those ads. Whereas in our apps, we don't seem to have a problem with that, but on the website, we do seem to have a problem with that. But I would have to say it'd probably be a little different if I was running a casino app. I probably would be hesitant to run then another casino ad. But for whatever reason, I think in the app world, it does seem to be different than perhaps in the web world.
I guess there's the nuance of you can segment too, right? You see someone who hasn't spent for 60 days and show them everything kind of thing.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. Tip for improving discovery or views. So this is where, integrate ads into the core loop. So, I've seen, when I was at my previous company, I was at Flurry, and I had access to a lot of data, and since then I've always taken an interest in seeing what is the frequency of views per DAU in a game, because you can, what I've seen is that there's a benchmark. Basically, 1 view per DAU is a pretty good integration of rewarded video. If you're down at like 0.2 or something like that, you're not trying that hard. If you really nail it, you can get 2 or 3 views per day if you build it in a way that's like, really showcases rewarded video. So I see people all over the map on that, but have you guys done something where you flipped one switch and all of a sudden you went from half a view per day to 1 or something like that? Anything that's really moved the needle?
Well, so for us, like we started off just being in the store. You could watch rewarded video, and then we put it sort of like in the main puzzle view, and in that, I think double, like a 2.5x to almost triple impressions, because that view is just looked at way more times than the store view for us. And so, but when we put it there, we wanted to be careful that it wasn't annoying. So we put it in a native way, such that if you would only see it if you really looked there. It wasn't like grabbing your attention. It wasn't popping. It wasn't jumping. So we put it there.
So when you ran out of coins, you either had to buy more coins, and so the game essentially comes to an end. And so we sort of put it in the paywall. You could either buy coins or watch a video. Naturally, people click on and watch a video, but I think putting it at that point of friction was pretty critical.
So I think it changes quite a bit since Cross Zero came on board. Before Cross Zero, everyone just have a button in the store, and we were told before that's the worst place because how many people actually clicked to the store, and those people who click to the store might be your payer or your whales, and then you just ask them to get free stuff. So
it's the place that non-payers never go.
So exactly. So the non-payers, 90% of them won't go to the store. So and Crossable kind of show us the way in the sense that not only they put it in the game, but they don't show it all the time, not every after mission. So when it actually comes up, you feel that you have to engage with it. And that's the other game that does well was Compass Point West. And they are more mid-core, but they randomize, they put it in the game, they have a little trail wagon that just kind of catch your eye, so to speak. So I think for us, we try different things, but definitely placement and adding to the end of the mission, those are definitely a big seller for us.
Cool. All right. Oh, we're kind of already talking about this. Other games that use ads well. I threw in Rodeo Stampede at the end. I wasn't familiar with Tap Titan. Who threw that in?
Yeah, it's an idle game, but they have a really cool mechanic where this like little dude comes up, kind of like the wagon, and you tap him and you can watch a video ad, but there's no real incentive to monetize other than the video ad, so it really rewards you for doing it, and it's part of that core gameplay. It's variable. I've watched a lot of videos on Tap Titan.
Can't resist the videos. Any other Solitaire? I mean, those guys, MobilityWare is integrated with like every ad network ever. What was it about their particular method that you guys liked?
I threw that one in there. And again, I think they did a great job having it at sort of the end of the game. I think it's extremely well integrated. The game's 100% free, but the ads that they run were very cool from the standpoint that you could actually play another game's sort of trial within it. So they had Yahtzee for buddies, and you could roll the dice. But I think it was pretty immersive, and I think naturally, I think when people expect to play solitaire, it should be free. And so from an end user standpoint, you feel like you're getting some value being able to play a free game and still be able to watch an ad.
Yeah, it seems like when people use interstitials as very clear gateways to new content in a very predictable manner, it's pretty acceptable to the user. It's the kind of spam out of nowhere interstitials that I think people throw people off. All right. Any other last comments on games? All right. Who makes ad decisions in your games? This is just something I find interesting as someone who's always trying to figure out, who do I talk to as an ad network? Should I be talking to the executive producer or the CEO or the senior monetization manager? I see you all put who you are, on this because you all think you're in charge. But
well, product people hate ads, and execs say you have to make money.
Yeah, exactly. It's a fight, right? But Tayber, you're a product guy, and you embrace the ad model because you're told to.
Yeah, I want to buy.
I want to buy a house in Whistler. There it is, folks.
I guess I kind of straddle both sort of sides of that, but I think we also just have a different model at our studio where product is kind of king. So every team that's part of a business unit, the product runs that. So if we think it's a good decision, we have to hit our metrics, and if we can make it work, then and that's probably why we have such a good integration, I think, is that in order to make it work, we wanted to do it the right way. We wanted to do it as part of the game. So we made very good product design, at least in theory.
Yep. All right. We already talked about this. You guys have all studied the impact of ads on retention, and that seemed favorable, so we'll skip that. Cadence for monitoring ad performance. Any tips here? You're not looking at this every hour, but you're also not waiting until the end of the month to see how things are going. How much optimization can you really do, or how much yelling at your ad networks really helps?
So I think that's come into play with mediation. Some people that I talk to saying, hey, we have mediation now, so we don't have to look at the performance. We're just waiting for money to flow in. And at the end of the month, it's like, why my eCPM actually lower than last month? And it's like, so I think that's a lot to do with having mediation. It's only part of the solution. You still have to, it's your onus, because the mediation doesn't technically work for you. You pay them, but then if you fail, they don't lose a penny at all. So it's your job on the line. So you should check periodically, if not daily, then weekly, and then make suggestion, just basically saying maybe like a network have a new SDK, and then they have the mediation hasn't updated the adapter yet, and then it crashes. If you check that at the end of the month, you miss a whole month worth of revenue on that, right? So you have to make sure that you have to talk to your account manager to make sure that do they have a big campaign coming out? If so, do you want to prioritize them in a different way? There's a lot of business side involved, and that's when the product team doesn't really like doing it, and that's why the business guy should make the decision.
There you go. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. I guess we only have a couple minutes, so let me I think we're good here. Questions. I always like to work this picture into every presentation I have. I see a hand back there.
If all the ad networks are not the same, how do you choose which one to test?
I mean, I think you start, I think Kenneth said, chatting with a lot of people in the industry. I mean, I think we put many of them out there, but, from a video standpoint, I think you start with sort of the big 3 or 4. I mean, it could be AppLovin, Vungle, AdColony. I don't know, is there anyone else? Really?
Unity ads.
Yeah.
HyperMX.
Yeah.
There's basically 4 or 5 big app install based networks. So yeah, AppLovin, AdColony, Unity, ChartBoost, Vungle. And then HyperMX and MediaBricks are the 2 brand focused networks. And then after that, there's the new guys like mNectar, which is a playable ads company.
Yeah, we have them. They're good.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of, I guess if those are the big video guys, there's several others, but.
That's why mediation can be really useful, because you can integrate a bunch of networks and then just toggle on the back end which ones you want to put. So I have 4 games with 4 different demographics. And that's the other thing, is each network is better for a different demographic. So, that's a really important thing to keep in mind. So best thing is to talk to somebody, come find one of us, and we'll try to give you some insight, I guess, into which network for your game.
Yeah, but I think it's just test and optimize.
Yeah.
Also make
Yeah.
deals with the ad networks because they're
Yeah.
always willing to deal.
I was going to say that was one comment I was going to add to that is they do pay bonuses for first call. So being on top of the waterfall is critical,
Yeah.
and they'll pay bonuses for that.
Yeah, don't make
if you
any
have the volume.
assumptions because as a mediator, I get to see kind of the different performance of different ad networks and talk to all these different companies, and I'll get three networks or three developers in a row be like, AppLovin's the best. I love AppLovin, and then the next one out there's like, oh, they suck. I just dropped them, and it's like it's just every game has different characteristics that perform differently for different networks, and yeah, networks are always jockeying, and if they see that something works really well for them, they might say, hey, I'll give you X% bonus if you give me first position for December, something like that.
And if somebody comes calling and they're like, hey, we want first position in the waterfall, don't say yes. Talk to the rest of the networks because chances are they're all have the same inventory that they're trying to
make a little
sell.
auction for it.
Sorry, guys. That's true.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, what do you recommend for developers just starting out in regards to, like, for example, if we're using AdMob for a game, and like how would we attract like the big companies to place ads in your game, and also how would we approach big companies to, I guess, to talk about advertising deals with our
Right. So I guess two thoughts. One is on the second question, until you have scale of like several 100,000 DAUs, you really can't get a conversation directly with big brands. They just can't deal with it. Even and as like since we talk to those guys directly, like sometimes we'll try to broker deals between games and brands, and even then it's really difficult. And we're talking about like we work with like Storm 8 and Angry Birds and stuff like that, and even then it's hard. So I wouldn't worry about direct deals with brands unless you happen to be like maybe you're a motocross game and you happen to know someone in the motocross industry or something like that. You don't really have to work to get brands to place ads in your game. If you're running AdMob or AdColony or whatever, they're going to start throwing a bunch of ads at your game and seeing what works. And so the first week that they'll go live with you, you might see a lot more traffic than eventually you're going to see because they're testing out all sorts of different genres and kind of their machines are learning what's working and what's not. Or maybe it's machine, maybe it's human optimized. But put in a few different networks and see what works. But maybe more relevant is like, two competing thoughts. One is, if you're really small and still new, I wouldn't worry too much about ads yet, unless it's going to be a part of your core design, in which case you want to be thinking about it on day one. Like Crossy Road.
100%. If you're designing another Crossy Road, then you want to think about ads right now. But if you're designing a game with long-term retention, it's more strategic. Like focus on all that stuff because every piece of the product that you put in that increases retention or monetization for those core users is going to be way more valuable than video ads. So you have to think about the game as well.